Sometimes when we read the Old Testament, it's helpful to remember that Jesus also would have read the Old Testament. This was his Bible. The New Testament hadn't been written, obviously, when he was wandering around, because he was the New Testament. So he would have heard the stories that we're reading, and he would have had to digest them and think about them too. And there's one from today's passage that he obviously liked because he refers to it in a conversation that he has in John chapter 3 with Nicodemus. And he talks about how just as Moses lifted up the bronze snake in the wilderness, so when the Son of Man was lifted up and people believed in him, they would receive eternal life. And that's quite a rich and different meaning to get from this story. But the essence is the heart of the gospel is captured in this weird story about a snake. You've got rebellious people, and they're symbolizing people like us who are sinful, who've decided we want to walk away from God and live our own way. And then what happens as a consequence is they start to die, and effectively they're poisoned by their rebellion. That's what happens with us. Sin, it poisons us. It seeps into our veins and into our lives. And this stuff that initially, it can start out feeling quite good because we indulge our desires, actually often it ends up trapping us, it ends up poisoning us through addiction and through other things, and we end up in a place where we don't want to be. So that's the picture of the people who are suddenly writhing around because the snakes have bitten them. And then the cure is a little bit odd. The cure is a bronze snake. Snakes cause the problem in the first place. The cure is a bronze snake lifted up on a big pole, and everyone has to look at it. And in the same way, Jesus is saying that he is effectively like that snake. For all those of us who are trapped and caught up in sin and mess, he comes, and when he's lifted up, there's a number of things that lifted up thing refers to. First one is being lifted up on the cross. When he's lifted up on the cross, you have there effectively the source of all the problems, which is a human being. Just like the bronze snake was representing the snakes that have caused all the issues. It's that thing of he's a human being lifted up, and it's a bizarre thing. You know, can you imagine if you're writhing around from a snake bite and someone says, "Hey, here's my bronze statue of a snake, have a look at it, you'll be fine." You think, "No, I'll go to the doctors." In the same way, we can think the crucified, lifted up Jesus is a very strange cure for sin, but by looking at him, and what that is code for is believing in him, we really do find life, and we really do find freedom. And that's because he's not just lifted up on the cross by human beings who have nailed him there, he's also lifted up and exalted by God, who sits him at the right hand, at his right hand. And so our job as we go out is to lift Jesus up with our words, to proclaim Jesus. Sometimes I forget that my job is to tell people about Jesus. It's not to make myself look good. And I reckon that maybe sometimes you might forget that too. We lift him up today when we talk about him plainly, and we say, look, we're in a situation where our lives are a mess. They're full of poison. I know it sounds weird. I know it sounds strange. But if you look to Jesus and what happens on the cross, you will find freedom, you will find health, and you will find life.